This is Cinepod, the Cinematography podcast, a program about the art, craft, and philosophy of the moving image presented by Hot Rod Cameras. I'm your host, Ilya Friedman, and today on our show, I interview Caleb Heymann. Caleb has worked on the hit Netflix series Stranger Things since the end of season 3. Starting off as second unit DP, Caleb was then promoted to lead cinematographer for Stranger Things season 4 and its 5th and final season, which is streaming on Netflix now.
It was absolutely a dream experience, already being a fan of the show, to be able to come in and join this group of, awesome people who work on it, and to ultimately get to work with the Duffers. I mean, I learned a lot from them. I think just their attention to detail and sensitivity to, in particular, camera movement. Mm-hmm. And it's about pushing everybody to do their best work.
In this episode, you'll learn about exploring the cinematic playground for each environment in the Stranger Things world, shooting the supernatural show on location with mostly practical effects, also using center spot diopters to create a new perspective for Will's vision and the Demogorgon POV. After the interview, stick around for our short ends, our pet obsessions of the week. But first, find out what's going on in the world of entertainment in a segment called Close Focus. Hey there, Ben Rock.
Hey, Ellie Friedman, what's up?
What's up? You know what's up. We're doing this this show for the second time.
All right.
Hey, technical problems aside, it is time for our Close Focus. What is going on in the world of entertainment right now?
We wanted to talk about the 31st Critics' Choice Awards, which are kind of a precursor to all the award season hubbub. So the Golden Globes, which we usually make fun of and blow off, but also they don't have a cinematography category, so why would we care? Whereas the Critics' Choice Awards do have a cinematography category. So why don't you tell us a little bit of the background of the Critics' Choice Award? Because honestly, I never even really looked into what the Critics' Choice Awards were. It's one of those things where I figured, hey, if it's getting a lot of coverage, it must have some value to someone for some reason, and I didn't think more of it than that.
Well, it is a organization of about 600 journalists spanning broadcast, radio, television, print journalism. They're critics. They're people whose career is criticizing movies and television, media, that sort of thing. They all get together once a year and they have their Critics' Choice Awards, which essentially they nominate and then vote for, and just as of like 2 days ago, then have an awards ceremony which gives away their prizes for lots of different categories, for movies and for television, and including cinematography. So
it's like a legit thing. Like a lot of actual published critics go and do this. It's not like the Golden Globes where I think they race frogs to see who wins. I think that's how they determine who wins Golden Globes. But
and it's also just not like two random people on YouTube. It's like these are people who make their career. I mean,
600 random people on YouTube. 600
random people, but also people like Joe Morgenstern, who I know now retired, but my favorite film critic of all time, and people like that, people who have done major work in film criticism, people like Elvis Mitchell, people like that.
Yeah. So legit people. So we only really want to cover really 3 categories for our listeners. You're welcome to look it up, and they have actor and screenplay and editing and all that stuff, all that good stuff. But I think that for our purposes, the ones we're most interested in are Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Cinematography. So I'll just go through and list them real quick. So for Best Picture, the nominees were Begonia, Frankenstein, Hamnet, Jay Kelly, Marty Supreme, Sentimental Value, Sinners, Train Dreams, Wicked for Good, and One Battle After Another. And the award went to, for Best Picture, One Battle After Another. Kind of not surprising. Like that movie's got some of the best buzz of anything out. Then for Best Director, we had Ryan Coogler for Sinners, Guillermo del Toro for Frankenstein, Josh Safdie for Marty Supreme, Joachim Trier for Sentimental Value, and Chloe Zhao for Hamnet, and Paul Thomas Anderson for One Battle After Another. And the Best Director award went to...
Drum roll, please.
Paul Thomas Anderson for One Battle After Another. Which,
again, not too surprising.
And, he seems like a great guy. So then, for cinematography, we take a weird turn. So the nominees for Best Cinematography are F1, Claudia Miranda, Frankenstein, Dan Lauston, Hamnet, Lucas Zoll, One Battle After Another, Michael Bauman, and Sinners, Autumn Gerald Arkapow. And Train Dreams, Adolfo Veloso. And I think it's kind of an upset that it went to Train Dreams, a movie I have not seen yet.
3 of those people have been on the show, and and all of the ones that I've seen, really, really good work. I haven't seen Train Dreams either, but yeah, I keep hearing about it. So now I think it's on the short list for both you and I for having to watch.
Well, and I think that we're getting the DP. I believe Alana told me that the DP is going to be coming on. So I've heard nothing but great things about it. I think that Autumn, when I was talking to her about Sinners, might have name-checked Train Dreams as being beautiful and a wonderful film. So it's the kind of film that if I'm wrong about Autumn, I apologize, but other DPs have brought it up to me as a great film. So very, very exciting stuff there with the Critics' Choice Awards. We'll probably make fun of the Golden Globes when they come up in a few months, but and we'll have for those of you paying very close attention, probably in about 3 months or whatever, we'll have Janelle Riley, one of the editors of Variety, come on here, and we'll talk about the Oscar predictions, specifically cinematography, and we'll know who went from the short list that we announced a couple weeks ago to being the actual nominees. And I feel like this kind of can be a little bit of a weather vane of how that goes. I think that the final list might look a little something like this.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Well, Ben, we should get to the interview with Caleb Heymann.
Here we go.
Caleb Heymann, welcome to the Cinematography Podcast in person. This is kind of like the old way we used to do this once upon a time. I'm really glad that you're in Portland and we got to have this conversation.
It's pretty cool here to be here live in the flesh in the brick and mortar Hot Rod, Portland, Oregon.
I know, it's really exciting. Hey, you're probably best known for the work you've done with the Duffer Brothers, with Stranger Things in particular. That show just had its series finale. My goodness, let's go way back. How did you get involved with the Duffer Brothers?
Yeah, so I started working on Stranger Things in 2018, toward the end of season 3. They needed a DP to come in and do second unit. And it just so happened that they'd seen a short film that I'd done, which was the directorial debut of Kate Treefry, who's one of the writers on Stranger Things. And the Duffers saw that, and I guess they liked it, and they were looking, for somebody to come in and help out for the final stretch of 6 weeks of second unit work. And I had done that and another passion project that were all these kind of, low budget to no budget short film passion projects in LA. And I had just wrapped a second one that was with another filmmaker that they knew. So I had a couple different people recommending me to the same time, to the Duffer Brothers, and they gave me a chance. And then I came in and, it ended up being about 2 months of work of second unit when we were in Starcourt Mall, doing all the crazy, the glass shattering at the Gap, the monster crashing into the mall. Obviously a lot of like drive-by stuff and kind of traditional second unit work. But then we also got to do some scenes because we had Uta Briezowitz came back. She was one of the guest directors that year. And I got to do some big scenes with her that involved like the full cast. And I guess those went pretty well. And then, subsequently the next year I went off and did this trilogy of films for, at the time it was going to be Churnin', but they ended up going to Netflix because of the pandemic, but they were called Fear Street. And that project had a lot of overlap with the Stranger Things crowd, and including Ross Duffer came out to visit us on set a number of times. And so he was seeing the dailies, and then somewhere along the way, the position for main unit opened up late in 2019. And he invited me to come because Tim Ives was not going to be coming back. So I had the opportunity to kind of come on as main unit DP starting for season 4 in 2020.
I know people to this day who they tell me they love season 4. Season 4 in particular, it has all of the drama and action and the whole Russian arc sort of stuff going on. Tell me a little bit about just the progression of the progression of you've talked about your role, how you went from second unit to first unit, and now you're leading the show. Talk about like a cast that's growing up and technology that is changing. I know that you guys did a lot of virtual stage type of work at various points. Did that technology also continue to change as you were going? How did tell me about the progression? We're 2019 to 2025. I'm sure things changed a lot. Tell me about it.
Yeah, so season 4 was a great time to begin on the show because it was taking a turn for the darker, with the introduction of Vecna and leaning into these horror influences, Nightmare on Elm Street, Dream Warriors, and Hellraiser, and I had just come off of doing 3, horror films, being a big fan of horror myself, and darkness and shadows as a cinematographer. It was a really cool opportunity to begin working on the show at that point. The story had grown, was out of Hawkins at that point. There was the whole Alaska and Russia storyline that had its own palette, and then there was the California storyline.
That's right.
That had a palette, and then of course there was Hawkins. So we had the opportunity to sort of visually distinguish each of those. It was still majority shot in Atlanta, and really as far as virtual production, we only used the LED walls. So we kind of built our own, not a full volume.
Sure.
But we used for driving work, we used LED walls. And obviously there was a good amount of visual effects. So, each kind of scene required its own conversations, about, there's a lot of back and forth, of course, as a cinematographer dealing with visual effects. But we've still never used the volume on the show, including on the new season.
So LED walls, which for those who aren't familiar with the technology, essentially LED walls don't respond actively and dynamically to the camera as it moves or as it changes. It's set and you forget, or it's playing great for driving plates, great for all kinds of different types of effects that way. I made an assumption, perhaps wrong then. So I'm guessing there was a lot of green screen, a lot of blue screen, or different types of work for the upside down, or different places.
Yeah, the crazy thing about the upside down is that it's mostly done in camera.
Really? Wow.
So yeah, it takes a lot of lighting. We're generally shooting it in the woods in or just outside of Atlanta. This park called Stone Mountain. That's great because it has, a lot of, it looks very wild, but it has road access where you need it to park the condors. And of course, for the upside down, so we shoot both the right side up. A lot of the normal nighttime wood stuff is shot there, such as, the opening scene, the castle buyers as established in the right side up. That stuff is all shot at Stone Mountain.
So are you redressing these exteriors then for the upside down?
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh my God, I can't believe the logistics of that.
Yeah.
Because if those are practical, like tendrils and vines and things like that, that means that because it seems like the upside down is almost always at night. It's like perpetually night and flashes of red and lightning and stuff like that. So that means you're doing day work at these locations, and then you're also then going back and you're doing then the upside down at night. Wow.
Exactly. So there's a whole team of nether technicians, and warehouses full of these, pool noodles that they've converted into the nether, which is what we call the vines. And it's just an insane amount of work because, they obviously all the sort of like foreground and middle ground that's going to be covered. And then they try and extend it, at least 50, if not 100 feet into the background, so that visual effects is, and then by that point, generally it kind of falls off into the fog.
Sure.
So the idea is always to get as much in camera as possible. And so when you look at like the opening of this season, where you have the flashback of Will, in the upside down, and so that's all location up to the point where he starts climbing the tree is all location.
Wow.
But then at a certain point, when he's like, 6 feet up the tree, you can't really safely do that out on location. So the treetop is a set, but the whole journey from Castle Byers to the tree is all on location.
That's amazing to me because, I guess my assumption is that there's a ton of VFX work. It's great to hear from you because, it sounds like super practical, super in camera, which has that 1980s, quality that I think that everyone responds to. There's something, tactile and real about getting it in camera rather than having to get it. Now, I know the floating, pollen or whatever it is in the air of the Upside Down. You're not actually adding that into the air, are you? Or is that?
It's funny because every season there's the discussion about the spores and can we do it this time around? And every time we try. And SFX, because that's their wheelhouse, they really do try. And for some shots, they give us a pretty good base that then VFX layers on top with even more spores. But often it's just, it obviously depends on what the wind is doing, and the things are not really supposed to fall. They have to float, and so they try and get multiple fans, and it's pretty crazy. But it's always everything in the show, I would say, is starting from that place of, can we do this in camera practically, safely? Like the red lightning, is in camera. Like you often, you just want to have that sort of tactile interaction to the lighting, as opposed to it just being a wash over the image. So we always do try to, push it and see what we can get in camera. And so the art department does an incredible job, builds us huge sets. This year we had, I think there was over 360 different sets.
I believe it. This current season, the final season, is like, its scope is massive. And you have, in addition to the Upside Down, you have this other sort of Vecna dream world type of space that is also like a physical place. And I'm not going to give it away for the 6 people out there who haven't seen it yet. But for the most part, you've got like this desert sort of facade, the thing that's going on. I assume that's not facade then. You went somewhere that was desertous to shoot this.
Yeah. So we basically start that journey. We have the, we have the woods portion and the Creel house as established in season 4. And that's all actually Atlanta.
Yeah.
But it needs to have a different look because, most of the season is taking place in November, except for the memory world wanted to have a very kind of like colorful, inviting. We talked about Technicolor.
It's very Technicolor. Like the palette feels like right out of something like 3-strip.
Yeah. And the trees needed to be verdant, and popping green and full of leaves. So we have to schedule around all these sort of like conflicting things where, a lot of the material needed to get shot prior to the spring and then again in the following winter. But all that memory stuff, had to be in late spring or summer. And then you get up, in that memory world, you get up to the cave, and the cave is a set, but outside of it is New Mexico.
I was gonna say. So you guys must have a pretty compact schedule. Even though I'm sure you shot for a long time, but you've got 360 different set pieces here. You're moving between stage. You're moving between states. You're moving between all of this different stuff to make it happen. How long, for example, did season 5 take to get into the can?
It was a full year of shooting. Yeah, I think there were exactly 240 main unit shooting days.
Wow.
So we started at the beginning of January 2024, and we wrapped up a couple days before Christmas 2024. And it was almost entirely Atlanta. Initially, we were going to shoot a lot more in New Mexico, including the abyss that appears in Volume 2 was going to be New Mexico. But then even that, for sort of logistical reasons, ended up being Atlanta. And in the end, I think there were maybe 237 days of shooting in Atlanta and 3 days of shooting in New Mexico, as opposed to the couple months that we were planning on at the beginning of the season. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting because would not have guessed that you faked New Mexico and Atlanta or in Georgia. Wouldn't think that would be easy to do. It's a really cool look that you've continued and modified over the seasons here. Can you tell me, in your own words, what you would say? There's a certain quality of like the way I remember the 80s when I look at Stranger Things, but it doesn't look like an 80s movie. I just watched Say Anything again the other day. Great movie, and it's authentically a 1989 made movie. Laszlo Kovacs, beautiful stuff. But Stranger Things, 1989, looks like I remember the world in 1989, not like a movie. It looks to me like this is what talk a little bit about the idea of the look of Stranger Things.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are definitely certain sort of, anachronistic visual elements that we wanted to pay homage to, so like the lightning is, can be a little over the top and theatrical. The horror elements, the lighting can sometimes be, intentionally, I think, riding that line between expressive and theatrical. Mm. And the, moonlight has a lot of blue in it. Mm. A bit more blue saturation than you would typically see these days. But I think we try to not overdo it because, so much of what's already being, presented in front of the camera, all the mise en scène is already taking you there.
Mm. Production design is incredible. Oh my God. I can't tell you how many things that I forgot about until then I see Stranger Things and I'm like, oh God, I had that t-shirt or I had this. It's like the work that goes into it. How much testing do you go into with production design and art department to make sure that colors and everything is going to work for what it is that you're doing? Is there a lot of prep?
Yeah, there is. It typically happens during our camera testing. So each season has actually been shot on a different camera and a different sensor.
Oh, interesting.
The first 3 seasons were all Red, and the last 2 seasons were Alexa. So season 4 was Alexa LF and LF Mini, which we would kind of bounce between those bodies. And then the new season was Alexa 35. And so each time we kind of go back to the drawing board as far as doing tests and kind of, looking at it with the Duffer Brothers and our colorist Skip and, playing around with if we can kind of, create a similar LUT with that camera, but find elements which we did with the new sensor ultimately with the Alexa 35. The reason why we changed over is because there were certain, elements that we really liked about it. I mean, that we could really push the contrast of the lighting. Sure. And, I knew that there were going to be these sequences where we were being very aggressive with bringing in really hot, searchlights and spotlights through windows and not really wanting to have much in the way of fill. And it's quite liberating to be able to do that and, let it rip basically without worrying about burning out your highlights. And then again, at the low end, that 3200 ES mode was super helpful for us. And honestly, having a smaller sensor, going back to Super 35 sensor helps us because there's a lot of action. The camera's almost always moving. And we just needed we needed robust lenses, but also a depth of field that was going to work with that style where we weren't going to have to do a number of takes for focus. And so it also ultimately made sense because most of the films that were shot in the mid 80s were Super 35 sensor size. So it felt right for the final season to land on that format, and we were just so impressed with the sensor and realized very quickly in the testing that we could push it a little bit further. And we try to do those tests on location or on the sets that have been built out on stage. There aren't a lot of standing sets on the show. Oh wow. Surprisingly, it's basically just the Wheeler House.
Wow.
Is the only one that gets rebuilt each season, and I guess Hopper's cabin. But the rest of them are from scratch, you know?
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So building from scratch or actually location work? Because I mean, I know there's a hospital that you guys go into several times. Are you building hospital sets? Or
That was the location.
That was a location. Yeah.
Yeah. That was a location.
Even
Hawkins Lab is
even
a
the
location.
basement, like that gets destroyed, the sort of like laundry facility, all location.
Location.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. It's so that's always we start with, can we find this on location, and Atlanta has quite a bit to offer. As far as the diversity of locations that you can find within 30 miles of there. So I would say overall about maybe half, or I'd say about 40% of the season is shot on location, 40%'s on stage, and then 20% was the Max Z, which is the militarized, access control zone of downtown Hawkins, now taken over under the military quarantine. And because there was going to be so much work there, it didn't make sense to shoot that in downtown Jackson, where, the few scenes that we've had in kind of downtown Hawkins before were shot in Jackson, Georgia. But because we were going to have such a huge amount of night work there, that was actually built out on the back lot at the stage where we were shooting, so that we could have more control.
Oh, right on. It's clever to me, like just all the puzzle pieces, because of course the grander and more ambitious the project, just the scale, the scale, I shouldn't just say creeps, the scale just explodes. So there's so much that goes into it. I mean, you've frankly been working with, these actors too for a fairly large portion of their adolescence, which is kind of amazing. There's like a lot that has gone by since 2018, 2019, since you joined the show. Is there anything that you can kind of like put your finger on, or like life changes that were that impacted you as a direct result of doing this, besides the fact that you had a job and were employed and you were living in Georgia and doing stuff? What was there sort of like changes in the way you approach your work, changes in your style, changes in maybe just your visual philosophy of how you do this?
Yeah. I think, one of the things, there's so many little things that you learn, over the course of a year of shooting. I think one of the things that really stands out is like just how you kind of, as a DP, need to kind of like help the morale of the team, and especially through some of those really challenging periods where we would have like 6 or 7 weeks of continuous night work, where we'd be having lunch at 1 a.m, our so-called lunch break, and then you have to come back in at 1:45 and still put in another 6 hours. And I think a big part of it is, just kind of the leadership aspect of that, if you will, or, like learning how to get the best out of the people that you work with and keep everybody motivated. But it was absolutely a dream experience, already being a fan of the show, to be able to come in and join this group of awesome people who work on it, and to ultimately get to work with the Duffers. I learned a lot from them about, I think, just their attention to detail and sensitivity to, in particular, camera movement. And they're always, it's about pushing everybody to do their best work. And there's a great attention to detail as far as just the intentionality of the camera, but also, we're constantly being challenged to come up with new ways to move the camera, and new sets that we need to fit it into, because we're covering so much ground. So it's a good, and also because the show has such a huge range of tones, it's like, different scenes are hitting different notes. And so it's a great sort of cinematic playground, to get to switch up the mood from something more comedic to something darker to something more heartfelt, a one-on-one scene, and then the next scene you might have like 18 people standing around, and then it's a totally different, muscle that you're using to and kind of mode of working when you're covering those kind of scenes, as opposed to when you're doing something that maybe wants to be more visually stylized or action based.
How do you do that then? How do you keep reinventing? How do you keep reinventing to keep it new? I mean, can you give me an example of something that came into this most recent season, like that you approached differently than previously?
Yeah, I think when we got to the final epilogue of this season, that after all the big action stuff is done, and that we've got 40 minutes in the finale of sort of the epilogue, the denouement,
the fan service. Yeah.
You
got to button it all up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was just so important with that to really make it all about the actors' experience, because obviously filming all the big battle stuff, it's very technical, and it's not always easy on the actors. It's often very physically demanding.
Sure.
But especially with the big ensemble cast, they have limited, opportunities in there to really shine. And so we wanted to, when we finally got to shoot, the whole epilogue, to just do everything that we could to make it, as much about the performance as possible, including how we would, structure the day and how we would approach coverage and whose coverage we would end with. And, for me, that meant using more, using more multiple cameras, and really just kind of reading the room and letting the kind of rehearsal in the morning then dictate, if an actor wanted to walk over to, a dark corner, say, for instance, we're going to roll with it, and we're going to really respond to that. And, I think it was, all the performances throughout that epilogue really hit home, because it was the one thing all season that we actually did get to shoot last, whereas everything else had been completely out of order. But the last scenes were actually the last scenes of those actors' films. So there's this amazing gravitas that they brought, and a lot of emotion to it.
I saw the final second part finale here in Portland in the theater, and I saw it with a crowd of people on New Year's Day. It was a totally sold out house, and I would say at least 20 to 30% of the experience for me was being in that room with all these other people, because I would say I'm a casual Stranger Things fan. I'm a fan, but casual fan. My two teenage kids, they're rabid fans, and they've got their Hellfire shirts and everything else. So when we went to the theater, I wasn't exactly sure what to expect, and it was a jovial experience going in there. But there's a death that takes place in the final episode, and there was someone about 4 rows ahead of me sobbing, audibly, and I could hear other people in the audience going so many people out there have grown up with this show. They have strong feelings. What's it like for you to be part of this cultural phenomenon, and how would you say that the culture of Stranger Things has bled into your life?
Yeah, first of all, it's very surreal. It's something that you never quite get used to or can wrap your head around, really, the scale of how many people watch it, other than it's very motivating when you're working on it, because you know that you have to kind of bring your A game every moment, and that so many people are ultimately not just going to watch it, but really care deeply about these characters and what happens. We had the same experience. We had the opportunity to go down to LA and see it in the theaters as well, with a packed house. They were all sold out. It's crazy how many people managed to see it in just those 2 days. But we saw it with the Duffers and a bunch of the other crew and team that made it. But otherwise, a screening that was completely open to the public.
Yeah.
And it was the energy in there was incredible.
Hooting and hollering.
A lot of that, and crying and gasping, and some parts, you could barely hear what the actors were saying because people were crying so loudly next to you.
Was it fun seeing your work on the big screen?
It was very cool.
Yeah.
It was very cool. Yeah. And also just, I think, really important for, for all of us to have that sort of closure and catharsis after this whole, journey, to be able to come and kind of have this, it was a celebratory experience. And also just to see that everything, it felt like, landed when it was, emotionally the right notes. I mean, that the audience was super engaged and with it to the very end. Yeah.
My question for you, and perhaps this is something that that you don't necessarily want to wade into, is 11 alive? Sorry.
But you should know I'm a believer.
You're a believer. All right.
Oh,
Good.
yeah. I'm definitely a believer. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, maybe if, Finn Wolfhard, Mike's performance wasn't so good, I wouldn't believe. But he sold me. Mm-hmm. He totally sold me. Yeah. I mean, when I read it on the script, it honestly felt like, oh, this could be either way. But then once I saw it, I was like, nah.
All right, you're in, because it's interesting. It's polarizing, and sorry for the spoiler here if you haven't seen it yet. But there's some ambiguity, but it's a good case that's made. So who knows? But I think that is in some ways one of the great things about Stranger Things. Stranger Things has rekindled a love for Dungeons and Dragons, which existed before Stranger Things. But I can tell you, I've not seen so much, people interested in these sort of like 1980s things that really had been, I want to say, more niche or underground. Or even then wasn't that popular. Like, I think Dungeons and Dragons is more popular today than it may have ever been. And people credit Stranger Things with a ton of that, of introducing it to them. They didn't know what it was before Stranger Things. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of little like 80s things that kind of keep coming back. And I mean, I know this isn't necessarily cinematography related here, but what is it about this sort of story and the love of the 80s and the love of Stephen King and horror movies and all of that time that continues to be timeless, in your opinion, that people keep identifying with? Is it just nostalgia, or is there something truly great about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's the eternal part of it that has to do with, storytelling and myth making and having these, one-on-one experiences that are not mediated through technology and screens and all that, but they're actually about like getting together with your friends, in the basement, and just kind of creating this world in your heads, and there is kind of this like meta element ultimately to the whole thing about the ties to filmmaking and what the Duffer Brothers have done with Stranger Things itself versus what Mike is doing in his world and in that final quest that, he delivers at the end. And I think part of it is just about like people craving, something, tactile, something, authentic, and, physical media as well, as opposed to just digital media. I mean, obviously there's been a resurgence in, records, but I also think that, I'm pretty sure that there was a resurgence in even cassette tapes now, yes. Which I don't quite understand, but Max and her Walkman probably had a lot to do with like bringing back the Walkman, which
It's crazy. I saw someone the other day with a Walkman. I was pretty blown away by it. So I didn't stop and ask them like why the Walkman, but no, it used cassettes are totally a thing now too. So
and VHS tapes.
And VHS tapes, exactly. Okay, I want to shift gears a little bit here. How did you get the bug? How did you get into this business? What made you realize that shooting television and movies was something you could do as a job?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up here in Portland, Oregon, and I graduated high school in 2000, i.e. prior to the digital revolution. And I would say at that point, I didn't know much of anything about filmmaking. It felt like a very, remote world, and it was hard to really learn much about it. I mean, especially with my parents. My mom was a teacher and was always fascinated with films and would use them in her classes that she taught at Portland State University, and then started also directing her own documentaries, which I shot
Oh, right on. For
We
your
had
mom.
no money, but I shot documentaries for my mom. We rented equipment over at Picture This, which is next door here.
Yeah.
And we would go off and make these things. But it did not feel like a career at that point.
But you know what? There's a little bit of nepotism there. That's just great. Your mom got you a gig, which is super cool. I don't know
That's
how many
right.
people who can say that, especially like, and so, okay. So documentaries, was documentaries then your first sort of love? Or was that like,
Documentaries was, it was. And still photography, it was, it was my first foray into it. And then it was really when I really got the bug when I took a filmmaking class in college and had the opportunity.
Did you go to PSU?
No, I went to Pomona College down in Southern California in Claremont.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have a film school, but I decided I need more of this. I need to go, by junior year, and I had that filmmaking class, and I really realized that I got the bug so bad that I was working on the thing until 3 a.m. and suddenly the time was flying by, and I was like, I guess I just need to figure out if this is really what I want to do and go to film school. So I ended up finding a film school in South Africa and went to a program called AFTA, which is in Cape Town, South Africa. That was similar to AFI. It was like a conservatory style shoot on film. Said I could come straight into second year because I'd already done some documentaries. And then I ended up cutting my teeth as a DP over there in Cape Town and staying there for another 10 years. But I think what really attracted me to it was the team aspect of it, the collaborative, creative, but also that you had to know, that it had the science and the art. And I saw that documentary Visions of Light.
Oh, yeah. It's
and
classic.
I was like, wow. Okay, that was, when I was in college, and it all kind of started to click, why I was responding to these films, and it was really the images that were grabbing me more than anything, and then being able to be that kind of bridge, between the director and the execution, and because I always was interested in the arts, but could never just see myself going off and doing my own thing in the woods and coming back and presenting it. I like the idea of making it with a group,
I totally understand why that could be so inspiring. Because and if anyone who's watching or listening to this hasn't seen Visions of Light, it's absolutely worth checking out. Wonderful interviews with all of these great cinematographers who all light their own interview, which I think is really fun.
Beautifully lit talking heads.
Really, really well done. Okay, so tell me more about South Africa. Tell me more about that experience, because that is not the usual sort of route from a guy from Portland who wants to get into the movie industry.
Yeah, it wasn't at all, and I never planned on staying there for very long. But as things go in this business, it's hard to have any kind of a master plan. Things have their own way of developing. And after 2 years there at the film school, I was done and had the opportunity to start hustling and making music videos and then commercials with, some of the people that I'd met there. And Cape Town is this incredible city. It's incredibly beautiful. It's complicated. South Africa's got this very complicated history.
I haven't heard this. No, I'm kidding. Sorry.
Yeah. It's full of, very beautiful, but also very, troubled aspects in history. And I just felt like this is this place where there's it's so dynamic, and wouldn't it be great to go to a place like that and, see if I could make movies.
Yeah.
Which the movie making part of it ended up being quite challenging because of, the financing pieces were not always in place, but it was it has a great crew base and is a great place to shoot. And for me, it was an awesome place to kind of get my start shooting, music videos and then commercials and short films and ultimately features. Yeah.
That's dynamite. Okay, so you're back in Portland. And I don't mean to make this all Portland centric here, but are you looking forward to doing some local work? Do you have some local work lined up here? Is it still you're going to be down in Los Angeles or somewhere else? It's
we'll see. Because I did Agatha all along, which was also Atlanta, and then Stranger Things, The final season was Atlanta. So it was like almost 3 years of living in Atlanta to the point where we bought a house. But then it also became clear by the end of that there was less work in Atlanta. And I don't know that the Duffer Brothers, their next project's probably not going to be in Atlanta. Marvel had then moved on to London. I mean, that's the thing with the film industry.
Yeah, it's true.
It's on wheels and it's always going wherever it's going. Yes, I would absolutely love to shoot films here. Hopefully we can put that out into the universe, and hopefully someday.
Do you feel a affinity to the horror genre in general, or is it a genre now that you feel you've done a ton of and you want to do some other stuff, or what's your feeling about horror in general as working as a DP?
Oh, I mean, I think it's the greatest, because I mean, it's obviously a very visual medium. It's so much about the shadows and how you reveal or don't reveal information and the pacing. I mean, it inherently leans so heavily on what you do as a cinematographer and how you use shadows and the pacing and how you create tension. That are just the craft of all that is so enticing and is in a way that you can maybe find it in other genres, but it's hard to find it in that density that you find in horror. And I'm glad that there's so many great horror directors out there right now making really inspiring and original work. And of course, it's also very important that those films are doing well at the box office, which is sadly, it's a lot of other genres are struggling at the box office, but it's one of the few bright spots, especially if you don't have a star-studded, massive A-list actor cast. I certainly hope to continue to do more horror going forward.
Is there a genre that you haven't gotten into that you'd like to too? Is there something else that's sort of like on your wish list?
I mean, I think ultimately it's about who you're working with and wanting to kind of find yourself in a story, feel like you have something to contribute and like it speaks to you. But I would love to do like some kind of a grounded sci-fi with strong characters, and really anything that involves some bit of world building, but that still really has strong characters and a strong perspective.
I feel like characters and perspective is so important, even in like a plot-driven project, and it seems really hard to do. It seems like you'll either get all character development or you get all plot development. To find that sort of thing that mixes the two. Do you have a favorite movie or a favorite film that you think does this really well? That's something that.
I mean, I love Black Swan so much, like for use of, subjectivity and body horror.
Maddie Libatique. Yeah, it's gorgeous too. It's really
absolutely good. Genius. Yeah. If I could do something like that, something gritty and lo-fi with especially because I mean, Stranger Things, part of the challenge is that you have such a massive cast, especially when everybody starts getting together at the end, you're balancing out like exposition with big action sequences, and then these other kind of scenes where you can that are more slower and more heartfelt. We did have a lot of chance to play with Will in this season with his subjectivity, and we did some interesting things around that to kind of But yeah, I mean, after coming off of a show like that's so big, so many sets, has such a big footprint in every sense of the word and such a huge cast. I mean, I love the idea of just doing something that's stripped down as well, and that's more about one character's journey. But ultimately, it's gonna be something that just speaks to you, where you feel like you have a place in telling that story, and you feel like it's important to tell.
In this final season of Stranger Things, there's some things that feel a little bit different. And I know we were talking about, how you try to bring something new or add a new spin to every season. Will suddenly has the ability to access the hive mind. He's a sorcerer. He definitely stands out in a different way this season. Can you talk a little bit about bringing this new Will in the underground, Will into the world of Vecna?
Yeah, so we were looking for, something that we could do visually to set apart, Will as he enters into his trance. And, you kind of see in the script that this is going to happen a number of times throughout the season and is ultimately very integral to, to the arc of the whole season. And we also needed to come up with a way of shooting the Demogorgon's POV, which and some Demo Dogs POVs, but mostly Demogorgons, which we'd never had before. So it was both finding, some sort of a visual motif that would, make you feel like you're going into a trance, that would then also segue into the sort of whatever version of a tunnel vision Demogorgon POV. So we discovered these filters called these center spot diopters that had just come out. I think we actually had prototypes when we were doing our camera tests early on. And I found that by stacking two of them, you kind of lost the
periphery.
The periphery that, and they also blended together nicely. Like you didn't feel like the effect was suddenly starting. And then I was just shaking it in front of the camera when the Duffer Brothers showed up one of the days in the middle of the camera test. We're like, that's it right there. But then we had to kind of throughout the season figure out, how to do this, how to shake this thing manually.
So you have an AC who's just shaking diopters?
So yeah, I was like, sometimes I would be doing it, but if it was on a Technocrane, Keslow Camera was our house, and they actually built us a camera shaker that could be remotely operated. It's like they're, they have like an earthquake rig. So they did something similar, but like modified it so that we could put these center spot diopters and be on a Technocrane and like remotely shake them. But it gave you that effect of like, that the world is closing in, and then we could kind of modulate it and shake it more intensively as his trance gets more and more hectic.
So were you shaking like a matte box or these diopters in a tray?
Just
or
like
just
lens whacking. It was just holding them in the hand.
Really? Okay.
In front of the matte box, or sometimes taking the matte box off and just really, really lo-fi.
Down and dirty. All right.
Down and dirty for sure. And you could never really get the same thing twice. And, you had to line up that little spot where they're clear. So, but, having those optical effects, it's nice, and you get this sort of level of interaction with all the practicals on set that you wouldn't get just out of a post effect. And then the other side of it was figuring out how to do these Demogorgon POVs, because those things are running around, galloping on the ground.
And
I
always thought they didn't have eyes. So it's like, the POV, I assumed it would have been like, echolocation or something. But no, it's like, it's it's them tunneling through the earth.
Yeah. Well, the Duffer Brothers, really liked those spooky POV shots in Evil Dead 2.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And there was something about that. Yeah. I was super lo-fi. But it was just that very, visceral, like dynamic, kind of
almost
slightly out of
undercranked.
control. Yeah. That speed. And so we found this incredible FPV. We found this incredible FPV drone operator who was like Blake Sams, who's like a champion pilot. And actually not only could kind of like, navigate these, between trees in these very tight spaces going at like 30 miles per hour and sometimes close to cast, but could also do the galloping because it needed to like be this like undulation. Yeah. So that was really cool. And we ended up shooting that stuff on a FX6 and had to put a little battery operated light on top of it.
Wow.
And
so FX6 on a POV drone type of thing. Oh yeah.
With a little light. And that allowed us to basically get away with not lighting that. So like for all the other upside down stuff, it's night, it's lit up. But yeah, for that stuff, we didn't always have the luxury for a 2-second shot of lighting up several hundred feet. So we would just shoot it during magic hour, shoot it at 12,800, and then get like more of a proper window to shoot it.
That's super cool. I love that. I'm so glad that you shared that story. There was another thing that I noticed about this season, which I don't think I can remember ever at any other point in the show, which is this big sort of like epic Demigorgon battle with the military, and there's this huge oneer. There's this huge, like, you know,
at the
long
end of
take.
episode 4. Yeah,
exactly. Talk a little bit about that, because like that's just totally out of the character of Stranger Things, but it fits. So tell me what's that about?
Yeah. I mean, it was, you know, we chapter 4, you know, when Will comes into his power, was always going to be like a movie unto itself, is the end of volume 1. And so we wanted to end it in a very climactic way. And immediately the Duffers were talking about, well, you know, we don't really want to do Steadicam for it. We want it to feel a little bit out of control. But we also, you know, didn't want to necessarily just go handheld, because there was going to be a lot of running around. We were a little worried about the footsteps. So we ended up using the ZG rig for that, and shooting it on an 18 mil, which we seldomly do, because we're generally in that range of like 24 to 32. We shoot a lot on 27s, 27 mil, using mostly Cook S4s. But in this case, we went wider. We went to the 18 mil. We wanted to be able to really take in everything that was happening, especially, you know, in the background, and have enough, you know, sense of the environment, because there's just incredible stunt work that happened in that. But then we kind of had to pick our moments where we created seams based on the stunt rigging, because there were like 60 stunt performers.
I was gonna say, it's huge. There's people falling off of towers. There's like, there's all kinds of stuff
flying through the air, sometimes above camera. It was a lot going on the stunt side, and they had a couple weeks to rehearse that, whereas we would just kind of like come in periodically to see how it was coming and talk about the camera blocking. And we tested this ZG rig, which is what we ended up shooting it on, that allowed us to have where we could kind of dial in as much of the handheld feel as we wanted, but not feel more of the hip movements of our incredible A-camera operator, Nick Muller. Is an incredible and incredibly precise, you know, Steadicam as well as general A-camera operator. Often we're on a techno crane. But here we were asking him to like muck it up, you know, to make it feel more reportage. And he could kind of dial that up and down on the ZG, so that we could kind of feel like things, like we were just responding to what was happening and losing control. And then we kept, you know, through that sequence, the shutter gets, you know, at one point it goes down to 90, and then ultimately by that point I think it's at a 45-degree shutter. And there was just a huge amount that went into like, because that whole space needed to be lit 360 degrees. And so we had a lot of units going. There were like about there were like 1,000 lights, 400 of which were from fixtures, but like every little, all the Humvees, all the muzzle flashes, and then, you know, all the practical sets as part of the location, made up about 400, and then also the condors and the construction cranes that contain film lights, that would allow us to get a deep enough, you know, shooting stop for all the slow-mo stuff. It was just a tremendous group effort to get that shot together. But it was great, because then we could come in and shoot at 360, and we had cues on the dimmer board. So when we panned in one direction, you know, we could have like all the south lights switch off on a cue and slowly dim down as we're looking north. And so it was just one of those, you know, it's incredibly satisfying to do a sequence like that, because it really, everybody has to nail it, you know, and then when you get it, there's nothing better than that feeling.
Mission accomplished. And Charles Pappert, the inventor of the ZG, is a good friend and a friend of the show. And I'm gonna have to remember now that I need to hit him up, because like, every time someone on the show mentions a ZG, I feel like he owes me like $20 because, and so that'd be like $60, Charles, if you're watching this episode, $60 now because of, no, you really owe it to you really owe it to this gentleman and to the people who are using it. Anyway.
I just want a free ZG.
Exactly. ZG is a pretty incredible tool. And for the people out there who are not familiar with the ZG, boy, I didn't expect to go down this rabbit hole, but it's essentially an attachment that allows you to use a Steadicam the way that you think that you should be using a Steadicam, but at the same time adds a little bit of handheld shake that you can adjust or ameliorate so that you can either dial up the floating effect or dial down the floating effect. And it's a really clever tool. Charles is a cool guy, and I'm really glad that that you guys got to use it. This has been a fantastic conversation. Absolutely. And I'm really glad that you got to come out and be on the show. Thanks so much for being on the Cinematography podcast.
Hey, thanks so much for the opportunity. It's great chatting to you.
All right, so that was Caleb Heymann. Caleb, thank you for being on the show. It was great. I can't wait to see what you do next and have you back. It's great to have
I want to pat us on the back for having an obscure, little, tiny, nobody talks about it kind of show to like Stranger Things, for featuring. Maybe us talking about Stranger Dreams might help to raise its
Stranger Dreams
its profile.
Yeah, we can leave that in. Stranger Things. Yeah, I know it was a little show.
It was Train Dreams and Stranger Things, their crossover episode.
Well, I think that it's a good Freudian slip that you had there, actually, because it's probably like one of the most recognizable television shows of all time.
Yeah, so I think it's pretty iconic show. It might be one of the most viewed television shows of all time.
It very well could be. All right, so Ben, it is our short end time of the show. It's the time we talk about pet obsessions. What are you all about this week?
So this is a short film that I am supposed to direct in March called The Ultimate Breakup, and it's written by a woman named Zena Lee Logan, who is also going to be one of the stars of it, along with a pretty well-known voice actor who's also a really great friend of mine, Yuri Lowenthal. Yuri, if you're a gamer and you've ever played the PlayStation Spider-Man game, Yuri is the voice of Peter Parker and Spider-Man. But if you look him up on IMDb, you'll see he's got about 10 billion credits. And Yuri's a good friend of mine. It's a two-hander. It's a zombie film. It's basically about an ex-wife and an ex-husband who we're in a zombie apocalypse, and the ex-husband's been bitten, and he's asked his ex-wife to be the one to kill him when he starts to turn. And so that's the short is the two of them waiting for him to turn. And it's a really, really great script Xena wrote. It's being produced by a woman named Alison Starlock, and I'm supposed to be directing it. And we are doing a Kickstarter campaign for it. We're not really trying to raise that much. We're trying to raise it's like a little bit over $6,000. The campaign launched today, and we're almost at $2,000 now. So it's not doing bad, and we're not trying to raise that much. But I just want to say, if you listen to this podcast, you like the crap that I say sometimes, it would be the nicest thing if you went on there, and even if you gave us $1, the thing about these crowdfunding things is it doesn't matter how much, it's the number of contributions you get that will force you up higher in the algorithm. So check it out. It's called The Ultimate Breakup. It's on Kickstarter. I'm sorry to be using this platform to log roll thusly, but here we are. And if you got 10 seconds, you can watch the video. If it sounds fun to you, I think it's going to be super fun. And and I should also mention that we're going to have makeup effects by Jason Collins of Autonomous Effects, and Jason's a very good friend of mine, but he also did all the makeup effects for Weapons, and he won an Emmy for Pam and Tommy. So he's awesome. It's worth it just to see what he's going to do, because it's going to be I'm just going to say it, super gross. All right, so please go to Kickstarter and check us out. Think about throwing us a couple of shekels, and if not, just watch the video and see me awkward and beardless trying to plug my own stuff. I'm lousy at it, but here we go. I'm here doing it. Ilya, what is your pet obsession this week?
Well, I alluded to it actually in the interview with Caleb. Like, I saw Stranger Things in a theater, and what? I just can't. I know I can't stop thinking about it. It was such an incredible experience.
Wait a minute. So if I'm not mistaken, Stranger Things is made by a company called Netflix, who
This
have
is correct.
who have made a hardline stance that like the theatrical experience is dead, right?
They've been very vocal about this, but they keep releasing things in theaters because they're chasing that sweet, Oscar buzz.
Okay, so tell me what it was like to see this in the theater. I mean, like it's a TV show. It's designed for you to sit home and watch it on your iPhone 1. What's it like to see it on a screen like that?
Well, first of all, there was no second screens. No one had their phone out, except for one guy who I saw like very, very proud recording the opening sort of like credits. So I'm sure he could post it later on social media. But everyone else who was in there was like dedicated and hardcore. It was, this, you could make the case that the part 2, this finale, was fan service. It really buttons up a lot of the stories, and the people who showed up, they showed up wearing their, Hellfire Club shirts. They showed up, really ready for full-on Stranger Things with a crowd. And when Steve almost dies and Jonathan saves him, there is this massive eruption of applause and cheering in the theater. And that is something, no matter how many people you invite into your home, it's not the same as 300, hardcore fans in the theater all really enjoying something. And that added at least 30% to my experience of what I was seeing, to have this collective moment with all the other people there. There was a girl that, 4 rows ahead of me, a teenager. When 11 appears to die, she breaks down and starts sobbing in the theater. And holy crap, the people all around, like you could hear sounds of like consolation, because even if they weren't crying on the outside, they were definitely doing some crying on the inside. This type of experience, this is like the campfire of old, people gathering around to have a human collective experience. You may not be the storyteller. It may not be your turn to, tell the story, but everyone there gathered together, sitting, in front of the campfire giant screen and experiencing the same empathy, the same moments of the story. This is something that's really, really hard to replicate any other way. And I was so happy to get to go experience it. Anyway,
Very, very cool. Well, and I hope that Ted Sarandos and all the people at the top of Netflix who are considering or trying actively to purchase Warner Brothers will look at this and see the magic of going to see something in a theater, and maybe will consider keeping those windows open a little longer and not turning us all into a bunch of homebodies who just watch their stuff at our house.
There is something pretty magical about, look, you and I were talking a few minutes ago about the Rocky Horror Picture Show. We were talking about heavy metal. We were talking about these midnight movies that for a long time, any city in America had a theater that would show this, and like hardcore fans, people who are really into it, would gather, and then they would all collectively have this shared experience. Yeah. Also, like, other cult films like The Room. It doesn't have to be that, though. The Princess Bride has got a huge following. Goonies has a huge following. Depending on, there's a reason that revival theaters do what they do. And in Los Angeles, of all places, too, it is crazy. Like, I remember going to see Highlander at like the New Art Theater. I saw Highlander there, like, I don't know, back in like the late 90s. And these closet Highlander fans came out of the woodwork. It was crazy to see.
I've seen Repo Man probably at 3 different retrospective screenings, and Repo Man always packs a house. I mean, like, when you talk about LA, people get jaded about it and go like, well, you're an industry town, so people are going to go see some stuff. But, I'm from Orlando, Florida, and I was a manager at the art house theater, the Enzian, which is in Maitland, Florida. Shout out to all my fellow Maitlandites. And the Enzian Theater regularly does these retrospective screenings in Central Florida, and they're huge. People love that shit. And it's because these movies really mean something to us, and seeing them on the big screen is a special thing above and beyond. Like, could I go watch Repo Man on any number of streaming services? Sure. But there's nothing will replace that sense of like, you're going to see little details you never noticed before, but also like someone will laugh at something that you never even noticed was a joke. And it'll create like a laugh that ripples through the theater. It's just to me, nothing beats it. I'm just saying that I want to live in a world that doesn't turn its back on one of the premier ways to enjoy entertainment. All right, well, so I think that about wraps us up. Who do we have to thank this week?
As always, we got to thank our predator, our producer, editor, Alana Cody. Alana is putting this show together, and I hope I didn't make her job too hard this week. Hopefully it's all going to go pretty well. And then we got to thank Kays Alatrachi. Kays, who composed the music, all the music you heard at the beginning and the end of this episode. Plus, he fixes keyboards, and you can go watch him on YouTube under Kays Labs if you go check out his channel.
Specifically synthesizers, not old typewriters.
You're correct. It is synthesizers. It is old analog synthesizers, which...
I would love to watch him fix an old typewriter. Here's an old Vietti.
I bet he could do it. Here's an Underwood.
Yeah.
Anyway, Ben, that does it for us. Where can people find you?
You can find me at benrock.com and also at the moment at that Kickstarter campaign for The Ultimate Breakup. How about yourself, Ilya? Where can people find you?
You can find me at Hot Rod Cameras, hotrodcameras.com. Reach out if you're looking for cameras, lenses, lighting, anything like that. And Ben, that does it. So you want to take us out?
Thanks for tuning in. This has been Cinepod, the cinematography podcast presented by Hot Rod Cameras. Find your next camera, lens, or accessory at hotrodcameras.com. Watch and subscribe to our show on YouTube or listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Follow and interact with us on Instagram, Threads, Facebook, Blue Sky, and LinkedIn. But not X. Don't do that. Thanks for tuning in.